Hi everyone, my name's Gerard Rennick and I'm the LNP Senate candidate for the upcoming federal election in the third position. When Jewel asked me to speak tonight, she asked me to speak about free enterprise and in particular some of the ways in which the regions have been doing it tough under Labor, under the Labor state government and the issues that are being faced in the regions. So I thought one of the best ways to start off with that is to actually repeat my pre-selection speech that I made last year at the exhibition grounds in July when I was pre-selected to represent the party. So I'm just going to read that out to start with, just to set the tone, and then I'll go on a bit further. So ladies and gentlemen, it is great to be delivering this speech today at the exhibition grounds, the place where the city meets the country, a beautiful metaphor for this great party. And can I say to you, I never want to see the day when Brisbane stops being a big country town. Because the day Brisbane stops being a big country town is the day it loses its soul. It's the day it turns its back on the regions. And that matters. Because what makes Queenslanders different is the undeniable bond between the city and the country. Or at least until Labor came to power. When I first came to Brisbane in 1988, thanks to 3 decades of Conservative government, Queensland was Australia's fastest growing state, and thanks to Expo 88, one of the world's most popular tourist attractions. More importantly, there is very little difference in opportunities and prosperity across our regions. Sadly today, Queensland has fallen behind most other states. Labor's dominance by the unions and bureaucrats has trashed the state. As a born and bred Queenslander, I know better than anyone. I've seen my hometown of Chinchilla lose its council, its farmers lose control over their farms, and sadly just this year, its maternity ward closed down. I don't know, did anyone see Sunday's paper again? They were talking about the bush baby crisis. Yep.
I saw your Facebook post.
Yeah, cheers, thanks. In the Callide SEC, so I said this 6 months ago, there's a fair chance that if a woman goes into labour unexpectedly, she will give birth on the side of the road. And that matters. You see, my sister Caroline was born with the cord around her neck. And those first minutes of her life without oxygen meant that she would face struggles in her life. What if those first few minutes had turned into hours because my mum couldn't get to hospital? What would have happened then? The biggest cause of premature death for women are complications arising from childbirth. Most of these deaths occur in third world countries. And thanks to Labor, Queensland is going the same way. When we wonder why people are deserting the major political parties, we need, and I've said this to the people in the LNP at the time, in pre-selection, and I'm basically saying it, I was saying it to them to tell them to wake up to themselves in terms of we've got to make sure we don't lose our base. We need only think of towns like Chinchilla and ask the question, what are our politicians doing about it? And if the answer is nothing, then why are we surprised when people who are feeling left behind tell us they are voting for another party? Parties who say they care about them, regardless of the reality. So that was the first half of my pre-selection speech. And in that I touched on basically where I'm from, which was my hometown of Chinchilla, and what's happened to that over the last 30 years under a Labor government. So that at the top of that priority there is the maternity ward. That just, you know, that is every town deserves a maternity ward. Every town in this state deserves a hospital. Because if a town can't have a hospital, then we can't call ourselves a first world country. And if Joh Bjelke-Petersen and a Conservative government could provide maternity wards without the use of poker machines, then why can't we now? We've gone backwards. There is no mistaking about that. And that means a lot to me for 2 reasons. A, because of what happened to my sister, and B, because my mother was a maternity ward there, was the midwife there. And when I was born there in 1970, Chinchilla had a population of 2,500 people. Today it has a population of 6,000. And yet Labor can't get midwives out there. Well, in my view, they're just not trying hard enough. Back in the 70s, there were 3 midwives there. Second thing, we lost our council. My father was a 3rd generation councillor. My great-grandfather was one of the first councillors on the Chinchilla Council. My family was a pioneering family there in the early 20th century. We amalgamated with the Western Downs, and that extends from Dalby all the way to Wandoan and south to Tara. So it's a massive council, and Chinchilla lost $1 million. So it had $1 million in its the council had $1 million, and that went to Dalby. And in the gas boom, the amount of approvals in the town meant that Chinchilla has now become a bit of a donut town, where the old houses in the middle of in the town are basically being unkept. Well, they were being unkept until the Commonwealth Games began and Labor decided to shift all the unemployed people from the Gold Coast out to Chinchilla. So theft and everything now has gone through the roof. Thanks, Labor. Yeah, no, I'm serious. And we had a bit of a mini boom, or what I call a boom out there, where house prices went up to about 400, 500,000, and now they've come back to about 200 again. But it's a strange situation where, you know, the town's lost its soul, for want of better of a reason. Now, there's another thing that's happened there, and of course, and that is the restrictions on land clearing. Admittedly, out there, it's probably not too bad because, you know, it was already cleared anyway, because it's, you know, beautiful black soil country, you know, some of the best agricultural country in the land. But my father was also, we've also got, well, my brother owns it now, but my family also had a property out at Quilpie, 150,000 acres of mulga out there. Dad bought mulga as opposed to any other type of country because he knew he could push the scrub. Now, when Thomas Mitchell originally came up through the route of the Mitchell Highway, so that goes Dubbo, Orange, and along that route all the way up to through St George and then Mitchell, he wrote about the Mitchell, what was now called Mitchell grass, the open grassland country. Now, a lot of that country around between Charleville and Quilpie has just been overrun with mulga. You know, the idea that this stuff's not, you know, going to die out or anything is just wrong. But that has severely curtailed the ability of farmers to manage their land as they see fit. So there are 3 things that I can personally relate to. There's other things, of course, that have happened. We've seen the, you know, intrusion of poker machines come into towns, and I know for a fact, I grew up in a small town, we never needed poker machines in the 80s to run clubs and sporting clubs. It was run by volunteers, and in my view, that's something we should aim to go back to. We've also seen the closure of agricultural colleges. Now, you would think that the Labor and the Greens, in their, you know, religion and cult of saving the environment and saving the earth, that if you wanted to do that, you would encourage agricultural colleges to encourage best practice. But unfortunately, they only talk the talk and not walk the walk. So they've shut down Emerald, Dalby, Longreach, and the Burdekin agricultural colleges.
Isn't there one about to be shut down as well?
Yeah, that's and Longreach. Sorry, yes, Longreach and Emerald are about to be shut down. Dalby and the Burdekin have already shut down, and that's signed, sealed, and delivered. There's no going back there. They're throwing beekeepers out of national parks. Now, beekeepers play a very important part in the horticultural industry. They're converting nearly all the state forests to national parks. So whereas once you could, you know, use state forests for beekeeping or agriculture for recreational purposes like motocross and that's all now being converted to national park west of the Divide. Cattle are being thrown out of national parks, whilst at the same time, and I can relate to this as I drive to Toowoomba, I live in Sanford, so I often drive over Mount Glorious. You know, we're just being overrun with lantana. So that's some of the issues that are going on in the regions, and I'll let David finish off. He'll talk more about that. Government control and its pervasive influence on our lives. I agree with Jewel on most of this, but I actually disagree with her on the point of the one thing that government should be doing, and which is what? Government should be providing essential services. And what we've done over the last 30 or 40 years is we've just about sold everything bar the kitchen sink. And I personally am against that. I think it's the role of governments to provide essential services. And one of the things I'm openly, you know, I'll say it when I go to party unit meetings, and I'm openly advocating against is we need to take ownership of essential utilities and provide those services to people. And the way we're going to do that, believe it or not, is print money. And what we're going to do is we're going to print money and then we're going to back it up with an asset that's going to increase in value, and that the jobs and everything that's generated from that asset will repay the debt. So we'll just set the interest rate at below inflation. In 100 years' time, the debt will go away. The key to it is, though, it's got to be income-producing assets. So it's got to be ports, rail, dams, and things like that. And if we do that, we will take control of our services back. Now, a lot of people will go, you can't print money because it causes inflation. Wrong. What causes inflation is scarcity. And we can see that in the electricity market at the moment because coal-powered fire stations are closing down. By the way, I didn't touch on the whole mining industry, which is copying it as well, but I think you probably know plenty about that. But so what we really need to be doing, if you build essential services and build more coal-powered fire stations, build more ports, build more railways and things like that, you will actually supply more services into the market, and therefore you'll drive the price down. It's not a question of printing money, it's a question of how the money's spent. If you do a Kevin Rudd and you print $50 billion to give it to people to spend, that'll increase demand. That will create inflation. But if you build an asset that generates goods and services, that will drive down prices. So that's something else I'd like to do. Where were we? Oh yeah, so the sale of assets. And of course, what's the next step after privatisation? What happens when we sell this?
Prices go up.
Yep, and who else? Who often buys this stuff?
China.
Yep, foreign infrastructure, foreign ownership. And look, if they want to buy a couple of units in the Gold Coast or something like that, I can live with it, provided, it's reciprocal. And that's something that we need, well, that's right. But that's something where we need to work on our message. Do I believe in trade? Absolutely. But I don't believe in free trade, because I've been an accountant in finance for 30 years and freedom's not a KPI. Freedom is a child of prosperity. It's a child of affluence. So the name of the game is to make money. There's only two outcomes in a market. You're either making money or you're losing money. We've got to be, as a politician, I see the role of a government is to make sure its people is making money so that they then get the choice to do what they want. And that's about as close as you're ever going to get to freedom, really. Because to be quite frank, I don't like using the word. I think you actually should be talking more about rights, responsibilities and rewards. Because too often say to people, our kids today, oh, you're free to do this and you're free to do that, and I can do, and they get this attitude they can do what they want. And I don't think that's necessarily healthy. That's some of my views on government interference in terms of what we should be doing. But of course, what we shouldn't be doing is exactly what we've done. Once we've sold everything off, we've now got nothing to do. I say we, the government, right? So what have we done? We've marched straight into the bedroom, the family home, the classroom, the universities, and even better, the boardroom now. So, we've all been saying for years how the union numbers in unions have been declining 20%, 15%, 10%. You know what? They don't care. Because while that's been declining, funds under management and industry super funds have been rising.
And they own them.
So now the unions are in the boardroom. They're running it and they're closely tied up. And you can see that through the agendas that are coming through Qantas. You can see it coming from BHP and things like that. They're starting to run their own political agendas out of corporations. Wrong. Just today in the front page of The Australian, we see the University of New South Wales has now required that every executive on a club at that university, and there's 300 of them, have to do a course on transgender studies. So that now, what gender has got to do with running a university club is beyond me, but that's the interference. We see Bill Shorten wanting to basically subsidise 3-year-olds going to kindergarten, which all starts off as optional at the start, just like prep started off as optional. But eventually, when enough people start doing it, first you'll always get the, pardon my expression here, the freeloaders who'll do it. Then you'll get the people who get worried about their kids falling behind, so they'll send their kids because they don't want their kids to fall behind. When they go into prep, they don't want or the second year of kindy, they don't want their kids feeling as though they don't know anyone. So you'll naturally do it. And I'm a parent, I've got 3 young children, and I can relate to that. You don't want your kids falling behind. So I don't like that because I believe it's at least, I accept that there's financial considerations today where, 2 parents often have to work, but I think we need to be encouraging and incentivising a parent to stay at home at least until the children go to school. Because, the more and more government interference, the more and more we lose control of our kids. And as you can see now, primary school children are marching and activists march, not on the weekend, during school hours. And of course the unions could do it on the weekend, but they don't, because they know by pulling the kids out in class, that's going to influence the other kids who are sitting there going, well, why does this child get to leave the classroom and go for a walk, a march, when I don't? So of course they're going to go home to their parents and say, Mum, can I go on the march because I get to miss out on school? You know, we can see it just at, you know, near my local state school. They're still hanging the Fair Go signs up. Now, Grace has come out and said it's wrong, but she hasn't made them pull it down. She's sending pamphlets home. Teachers' Union is sending pamphlets home to kids. I don't know if you read about that one last week. Yep, so, yep, Fair Go for teachers, even though it's completely wrong. The coalition government has increased expenditure by about 20% over the last 5 years at a gross level, and most of that's been in per student. Is actually in the secondary, you know, in the private school, public school space, not the university. So it's probably more about a 30% rise in education. So they're actually factually wrong as well, what they're saying. So anyway, that's a little bit about me. I'm out of time. So yeah, any questions later on, please come up and speak to me. Thank you.